Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning,
Good morning.
Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Bati. Good morning, Ayo.
Good morning.
And good morning, Rufai. How's
Queen
everybody?
of implication.
Please stop. That's
Queen
okay.
of implication.
Thank you
Two
so
implication
much.
in a
Promise
row.
that you delivered.
Doctor,
We try.
Very
Following
good.
the
Doctor.
following
You
your
should run
example.
for election.
your implication promise is looking like Bawumia's concession. Ayo, you two, you and
I'm giving
Doctor,
you my promise
you are
now.
Bawumia as far as I'm concerned. It's Femina that is Mahama.
The Mahama of the group. Okay. Okay. And it's
And then
funny
we
that
do
you should say
implication.
that.
though.
Because we will be discussing Ghana, but not before we discuss another story happening around the world. Now, after more than 13 years of war, hundreds of thousands of people killed and millions displaced, the 24-year rule of Syrian President Bashar Al-Assad is over. Following the shock news of rebel forces taking over the Syrian capital of Damascus on Sunday, overthrown leader Bashar Al-Assad, who has resigned the presidency, ending 53 years of his family's authoritarian rule, and he and his family have arrived in Moscow after being granted asylum out of humanitarian considerations. It's no real surprise that Al-Assad fled to Russia, which has two key military bases in Syria. Moscow is also a staunch ally of Assad and had intervened in Syria's 13-year civil war in an effort to keep him in power. Evidently, Russia was unable to stop the collapse of Assad's government in the face of a lightning rebel offensive that took advantage of his other key allies, Iran, and Lebanon's Hezbollah movement being distracted by other conflicts. Now, speaking of other conflicts, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered the military to seize the buffer zone that separates the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights from the rest of Syria. It's the first time Israeli troops would be stationed there since 1974. And moving on to the African continent now, and Ghana's former president, John Dramani Mahama, has won the country's presidential election after his main opponent, Vice President Mahamudu Bawumia, conceded defeat. The defeat in Saturday's election ends 2 terms in power for the governing New Patriotic Party under President Nana Akufo-Addo's, marked by Ghana's worst economic crisis in years, involving high inflation and a debt default. Bawumia said he called Mahama of the National Democratic Congress to congratulate him. Now, Mahama's win marks a historic victory, making him the first president in the 3 decades of Ghana's Fourth Republic since 1992. The 1992 return to multi-party democracy. He's the first president to reclaim the presidency after being voted out. With this election, Ghana continues to show itself as an example of democratic stability on the African continent. Now, I don't think many people were surprised to hear that Mahama was able to return into power. What strikes me is what his presidency will now look like. You remember the first time he was in power, he made it clear that he wanted Ghana to be a lot more self-sufficient, that he believed that Ghana should be able to go it alone and not rely on IMF. And now the economic situation is worse. I wonder what his leadership would look like. Happy to hear your thoughts.
Couple of things. One thing he campaigned on heavily was that 24-hour economy. To be able to give that economic security to a lot of people. We all know that the economy was really depressed on Nana. These elections are quite very unique in the sense that he, coming into these elections, this is his 3rd time trying. He was president after his predecessor then, a term had passed, and he continued a term term, and he won elections, but it's been difficult for him to come back. Also very unique because for the very first time, you had 2 people from the same northern region. He's from the Savannah northern region, Bawumia is from the northeast region. And kudos to Bawumia because the elections are not even anywhere coming. In fact, I was just checking Daily Graphic now to see that they've just counted about 1 million votes for Mahama and about 700,000 for Bawumia. Normally, the threshold of winning is about over 6 million. So they have about 5 million votes to count. And it's so early in the day, Bawumia coming out to say that he concedes because he's checked the electoral numbers and he knows.
And believes them.
There's been a lot of shift in this election. I'll give you an instance, for instance, the Ashanti region, where an independent candidate won a very important seat. The independent candidate, Frimpong, used to be the owner of the Salt FM radio station that was closed down at some point before the elections, and an opposition MP did come. Another thing we should learn from Ghana is the role of independent candidates. And that's why when our INEC chief was saying that Ghana learned some things from us, no, they didn't learn anything from us. Is it him that's not been able to tell us what constituted the technical glitch in the presidential election that we learned from? Another thing we should learn is the boldness. But Nigerians too were bold in our elections. There are
Sure.
people that stood up tall. I never forget the lady Jennifer that was caught with a knife, you know, for
Yes.
standing up tall and other things like that. But they stood up tall to the authorities and they really wanted their country in their hands. So he knows that it's incumbent on him to do great. Just like what's happening in Syria, it just shows you that an hegemony cannot last forever.
Absolutely.
Look at Bashar al-Assad, about 53 years. His father, then him. But the cards started to fall because Russia was fighting their war. Hezbollah had their own battles too. Iran had their own distraction. Nobody could save him. They say he's going on exile to Russia now.
He's gone to
But
Russia,
the
yes.
future of that country is still very fluid because when you look at it, America is carrying out strikes now to be able to ward off Al-Qaeda and other things. It's still very fluid because if Gilani, the current prime minister that is there, does not ensure that they get to elections on time, it might just make it an international terrorist bazaar again because there are many factions. Turkey's in the
definitely,
mix,
yes.
many, and it might be another battleground for proxy warfare. So they should be careful. I think the transition should be the next thing for them to do. But it shows empire lasts forever.
Very much so.
All right, so let me talk about the Ghanaian elections over the weekend. And this is because days leading to the elections, there were concerns and fears as
Yes.
to violence and the conduct of the election. So even some of my friends and people in Ghana that I interacted with, a lot of them were a bit apprehensive as they didn't know what to expect. But Saturday demonstrated that Ghana still holds, at least in West Africa and Africa, that bastion of the true democracy where they're able to seamlessly transit from one system of government or administration to another administration, even if the incumbent loses. Now, a lot of people have praised Bawumia's conceding speech, even though the results haven't been officially announced. But what people have said is he's able to make that speech because they compared it to, in other parts of Africa, you two should go and concede, make a phone call. But the reason why it was easy, I would say it was easy for him to do that was because the process was credible and transparent.
Right.
When a process is credible and transparent, it makes it easier for opponents to make that telephone call.
Absolutely.
I mean, the only president that we all remember in Nigeria who's done that, and his name will be written in history, is former President Goodluck Jonathan.
Yes.
And he's been seen as an ambassador of peace ever since then and so on. So praises to Bawumia, who saw that the will of the people was in this direction and respected the will of the people. Beyond that, also praises to the Ghana Electoral Commission.
Absolutely.
Now, the process, I have to say, very transparent. And the fact that the transmission of results, if I talked about technical glitch, there's no room for that because, number one is there's a culture of political, shall I use the word decency in Ghana. And that's something we need to fix in Nigeria. It's not just about making laws, it's the fact that when things are done properly because there's a culture and an understanding by the people that this is how things ought to be done. But how it's done is that amongst the constituents, the result sheets, first of all, agents are there, they are able to observe the process.
Sure.
When it gets to the center, they are then given, they have 20 minutes to go through the results to see that it tallies with what they got at their polling units, and then they return and everyone signs that they're okay with it. So it's a very transparent process so that people find it very difficult to challenge results, to say that, there was the hanky-panky here and there.
Right.
So that's one of the things that we must praise, the process and the system. And people have, again, of course, gives us the opportunity to revisit the Justice Owei's report, how we must have election reform, right from the appointment of the chair of INEC, and how that is done so that it is done transparently and properly. So those are the things that I must mention. But in terms of administration, I was saying off air that I wasn't very enthusiastic because during Mahama's first term in office, he also was plagued with corruption, even though it was not as bad as Akufo-Addo's tenure. He also was plagued with economic challenges, even though, again, it was exacerbated by the last administration.
Yes.
But these were some of the... In fact, they used to call him Dumso, which is off and on because he had power challenges in Ghana.
Right.
So I want to see what he will bring to the table. But one of the things, like I said earlier, when I'm speaking to you, was that what a motivation for these people to act well because they know that the people can vote them out at the polls if they don't perform.
Absolutely.
That is a great motivation for leaders to act up. But if in a system whereby whether or not you perform well or not, you know how to do the thing and there's no motivation to actually serve the people. So congratulations to the Ghanaians who have again demonstrated to West Africa and the rest of Africa that elections can be conducted in a manner that leaves little to contest or little for people to argue or fight about.
Thank you, Ayo.
Well, I was very deliberate when I asked Tokumbo to tell us about lessons, as the man on the ground in Ghana, lessons that he has possibly observed. Well, he's correct on all the points that he articulated, but I would like to add to it this. Now, the people of Ghana, they went onto the streets yesterday dancing, jubilating. I think they should receive this, concession by Bawumia with cautious optimism. When President Mahama was leaving government in 2017, he left also a very poor economic condition, high unemployment rate, and now he's back, and people are jubilating because under Nana Akufo-Addo, Ghana recorded one of the worst economic moments in its history. Now Mahama is coming back to correct the situation, but will he be able to do so? Because he will have the same issues to deal with. High inflation rates, economic debts, a lot of expectation on the part of the people. And I hope he will not have overpromised. Similar to the situation in Nigeria when President Tinubu came to power. Renewed hope, renewed change. Okay, 2 years more or less down the line, Nigerians are saying, we thought the miracle that Governor Tinubu performed in Lagos, he will come and perform it as president. That is not yet the reality. So we're still being told to be patient.
Sure.
That's one, about cautious optimism. Second, Nana Akufo-Addo may have mismanaged the situation in Ghana, but I think, credit should be given to him and his party, the New Patriotic Party, the NPP, for allowing democracy, for allowing the will of the people to prevail.
Sure.
Yes, there was scuffles in specific constituencies, but at the end of the day, the people of Ghana were allowed to speak, to vote. Tokumbo pointed out that, look, even if your name was not on the register, if you didn't have your card, if they could check the system and you were there, you were allowed to vote. That would never have happened in Nigeria. And then Bawumia, Mahamudu Bawumia conceding, even without the official result. He said from the field reports that we have received, that this is change in Ghana. The people have voted for change. That's the main opposition politician saying that. Why is it so? Results from constituencies, the remote constituencies, are collated in those locations in Ghana. It's only the presidential election that is sent to Ghana. 275 constituencies in total, denied parliament, And out of those 275 constituencies, the Democratic Party, the party of President Mahama, swept most of the positions. So it was already clear that the election has been won and lost, and that was why he conceded. So congratulations also to him. The issue again is that Mahama, the man who is there now, was president 2012 to 2017 when he handed over. He lost the 2016 election. He has lost election 2 times.
Yes.
This is the 3rd time. Now, despite losing election 2 times, he didn't leave his party. If it's in Nigeria, and most of the other people that won in the constituencies, they stayed with their party. If it's in Nigeria, in a space of 4 years, one man will have been in 5 political parties. So you see that Ghanaians are a bit more decent in terms of ideology, in terms of political choice. And that's why you have 2 dominant political parties in that country. And I take the point also about independent candidacy and many other lessons that we can learn from Ghana.
Absolutely.
We just hope that this will lead to, improved relations with Nigeria at a bilateral level. John Mahama, president-elect, presumably, being a chief of a kingdom and a very good friend of the Nigerian society, that will help relations between Nigeria and Ghana. Finally, with regard to Assad, the fall of Assad, after 24 years in power, 54 years of the Assad family imposing one of the most murderous dynasties in Syria. His father wanted his brother, but that one died in a vehicle crash, and then he got there. He wasn't really prepared for that office, and he compensated for it by being very brutal. And he had the support of Russia, he had the support of Iran. But he fell because that support that was promised did not come. As for Israel, Israel has taken over the Golan Heights, the corridor that was provided. And Israel is trying to protect itself, and its claim to the Golan Heights corridor is only recognized by the United States. However, the future is one of uncertainty in that region, with Israel trying to assert itself as a regional power.
Thank you all for your great analysis. Let us move on to the newspaper headlines across the world. We'll begin here in Nigeria with the front page of This Day. This Day leads this morning with news of Mahama's victory once again. President Tinubu has called to congratulate him, as well as former Ekiti State Governor Kayode Fayemi has actually praised the conduct of this election, as many people have. This day also features comments from Nigerian Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Senator Abubakar Bagudu, who says the tax reform targets stimulating economic activities and more employment. Staying with the tax reform bill and the push for fiscal federalism is The Guardian's front page this morning, which breaks down the VAT growth trend since its increase to 7.5% in 2021. To the front page of the New Telegraph now, and it leads with defections, as Dr. Abati alluded to in his commentary in Ghana. APC decimates opposition ahead of the 2027. That is the headline there. The ruling APC party has been accused of wooing opponents with return tickets. The Vanguard sheds more light on the 466 days or 15 months since President Bola Ahmed Tinubu ordered the recall of envoys, which has left Nigeria's foreign missions without ambassadors. The current delay, as of now, is 5 months shy of the 20 months it took President Muhammadu Buhari to appoint ambassadors. Now, according to the Vanguard's article, the delay is continuing amid claims that some of the recalled ambassadors have not been paid their disengagement allowances, known as AIEs, Authority to Incur Expenditures, for their passages. The Daily Trust reports on the rot in the dam and irrigation infrastructure across Nigeria, posing a threat to dry season farming. With 408 dams, Nigeria has the highest number in Africa, but they are mostly in deplorable conditions due to years of neglect, unfortunately. And Nigeria's Daily Sun reports on the controversy brewing at the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities over the termination of a 3.2 billion naira contract after due the conclusion of the procurement process. Essentially, that council came in after the procurement process. Moving on to our African papers now, and the Daily Graphic, no surprises, has winner of the election, John Mahama. The headline there, Mahama makes comeback. As we mentioned during the World Brief, Mahama is now the first president in 3 decades of Ghana's Fourth Republic to reclaim the presidency after being voted out. And if we take a look at another paper on the African continent, if we take a look at the Namibian, it has President-elect Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, who claims there have been attempts on her life. And she says that it's not a recent issue. As early as 2017, she says she was involved in a car accident and many people threw parties to celebrate. And she, despite this negative experience that she's going through now, she has also thanked those who have prayed for her. To the United Kingdom now, and most British papers, including the Daily Express, lead with the toppling of Bashir Al-Assad and his subsequent fleeing to Russia. Those are my papers from around the world, my friends.
I mean, pretty much the big story across the papers here is that of Mahama.
Yes.
But as regards also the case of defection and this dangling of tickets, I mean, we saw what happened in the course of the week. But there was also a counter-narrative. I think somebody came on one of the sister television stations and specifically said, for those that left the Labour Party, that there is no internal struggle in the Labour Party. So obviously, these people did it for their own selfish interests. And except we get to a point in this country where once you leave a political party, you are made to fight for that seat again. Yeah. We're not going anywhere. All of this that we do, that we do the Constitution in such a way that you still have to go to the courts, and to effect it and all of that. We don't go anywhere. It happened so many times in this country. There's a senator now late that also left the YPP like that and went to join the APC. Nothing happened. And it's become a recurring decimal. So people do it and they get away with it. If we don't fix that, then we don't have a democracy. It's a charade we are running if we don't fix that particular provision that talks about people that leave the because a platform brings you in and you leave the platform and you still want to keep your seat while going to another platform. Right. It's the height of madness and unmitigated stupidity.
I mean, on the ballots, it's your party that people thumbprint. And I mentioned that last week. So we need to make a decision whether it's the individual or the party that people vote. And then if that's the case, then let us encourage independent candidates, if that's the case. But that's not the case at the moment. So it's only fair that if you leave or vacate your seat or you defect, then you should also vacate your seat. But That's been a topic for debate for a long time. But let me talk about the ambassadors.
Yes.
Because it's something that should be spotlighted. The Vanguard does a good piece on this, and also had the opportunity to interview some people, some career diplomats, some people who had worked in the diplomatic corps, just to talk about how this is hurting Nigeria. And we talked about this on this table, how we are unable to really, build on the gains of President Tinubu's travels abroad.
Yes.
If we don't have ambassadors at that level to engage with heads of states in their country. Because, yes, he appointed in April of this year charge d'affaires and also consul generals. But there's only a limit. They can run the day-to-day administrative work of the consuls or the embassies. But in terms of engagement and representing the nation at that level, it's ambassadors that can do that.
Absolutely.
What is the waste? Is he trying to beat President Buhari's record that you mentioned 20 months into his administration?
Yes.
These are some of the things that you would imagine that if you're a country that's serious about foreign policy and improving foreign relations with your foreign partners, then you should put into consideration appointment of ambassadors. A few weeks back, there were rumors about a list that was released and not released. This is what happens. It gives rise to speculations and not speculations. So he should appoint ambassadors so that Nigeria, if not, Nigeria is well represented in these countries, and the ambassadors are able to speak at the highest level to represent the interests of Nigerians. When we went to France, we were asking, it should ideally have been the ambassador of Nigeria to France to receive him and to facilitate his visit. But that didn't happen. So this is another call to the president and the presidency. Let's make the appointments. I don't know what the delay is. There's been no reason given, but let the appointments happen. Let's have our public image abroad is very important.
Well, I'll go back to the Syria story. I jumped off at the point when I talked about uncertainty in Syria. The man that is out there is a man called Mohammed Al-Julawi.
Yes,
who has seized the position of prime minister and who says there will be a transition. But he's not the only key player. There are other forces, because what united those various factions, rebel factions, is to get Assad out of power. Now they've succeeded. Assad is an exile, on asylum exile in Moscow.
Yes.
Now there are others. There's the Kurdish Syrian Democratic Forces in charge of the Northeast. There is the Syrian National Army backed by Turkey or Turkish forces that is in the Northwest. Then you have the ATS, which is led by Julawi, that is in the province of Idlib. Now they all got the opportunity, and there's even the Southern Opposition Forces based in the city of based in the capital in Damascus. They all joined hands together and they pushed him out. Now, their target is out. Will they be able to work together?
Now,
That is the major uncertainty that the international community has to worry about, beyond the jubilation by Trump, by Joe Biden, by Western allies, that a British regime has collapsed. Finally, something else I picked up in the papers. It's about this public hearing about the tax reform bills.
Yes.
Now, if you look again at one section of those reform bills, section 74 to 87, there is a problem there in terms of the role of the Upstream Regulatory Commission and the FIRS with regard to the collection of petroleum royalties. Now, the NUPRC, which is the acreage acreage manager, as in the Mining Act of 1959. Since 1959, that body that have evolved manages the acreage and collects petroleum royalties. Petroleum royalties for Nigeria are collected not directly by NUPRC, but by Morgan Trust Bank, and then for the government. Now they're saying in these relevant sections that it will now be collected by the FIRS. What is provided for in the PIA, and that's where the conflict is, the Petroleum Industry Act, is, the PIA says the FIRS will collect income tax, some other categories of company income tax, some others, while the NUPRC will collect, royalties, petroleum royalties, basically. This is one of the conflicts thrown up by these Tinubu tax reform bills that we hope that the public hearing will take care of, and that we hope that the National Assembly will pay attention to, because you can't keep having these conflicts that take us nowhere.
All
right, well, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure.
Great to have you on the show. See you again tomorrow morning.